Privately educated, rich white politicians locking up disproportionately poor black young men. That is the war on drugs, summed up as pithily, I'm afraid, as you're going to get. Now, I was on the Jeremy Vine show to say why we need to legalise cannabis, but also why the war on drugs in general is a failure.
I think very, very pro this. Portugal, I went there and I interviewed the people behind the decriminalisation of drugs, which took place about 2 decades ago. When they decriminalised drugs in Portugal, overdoses collapsed by 85%. It's got amongst the lowest drug mortality rate in the European Union, a rate 50 times lower than the United States. Drug use amongst teenagers and people in their 20s fell. Problematic drug use, that is people with addictions, that fell. The reason is they treat it as a health issue rather than a criminal issue. So you're referred to a health clinic and then assessed for your needs rather than criminalised. What we have in this country is people who are disproportionately young black men have life-ruining convictions, often for doing the same things that Tory cabinet ministers did. That's not libelous because several Tory cabinet ministers are on record for saying they did drugs, they haven't gone to prison, they haven't got criminal convictions, which has ruined their chances of, for example, getting jobs and all the rest of it. And what we can do as well with cannabis, for example, because some people go, what about these dangerous types now in circulation? This is the way to solve it. You legalise it, which is what they're talking about in Germany. You can provide only the safest possible forms of cannabis. You take out all the dodgy stuff out of circulation. And the final thing which makes it so good is you take it out of the control of the criminal gangs. You take away a massive source of revenue that gangsters have, and instead you make it so you can bring in tax revenues for the state, which you can use for public services, including treating people with addiction. It is a no-brainer. It makes no sense. The war on drugs has failed. Since it started, more people use drugs than infinitely than when it started. There's far more crime and violence as a consequence. Let's end the madness and finally end this.
What do you think, Ali?
Well, I mean, look, it makes a good point. The war on drugs has failed, yes, but in my view, the answer is not legalisation. I mean, you could make an argument there that why don't we legalise cocaine as well, all drugs, right? Look, I've been around drugs for over 2 decades as a DJ in clubs all around the world, right?
I was going to say,
I've never taken drugs. I've never taken drugs myself because I've never felt the need to. I mean, I've always been into the music, but it's very prevalent, not just marijuana, but also MDMA and other sort of enhancing drugs,
dangerous drugs,
very dangerous drugs. And I've always felt that there was no need for this. Now, the point here is the German government, the German health minister, is trying to come up with a solution along the lines of what Owen is saying. The thing is that you're going to have there are psychological effects of these things as well, by the way, right? If it didn't have any impact and it was so benign, you wouldn't feel high when you had it. Right? So it does have, and everyone reacts differently. You cannot predict how someone's physiological reaction is going to happen in response to drugs. So there's also opposition within the pharmaceutical or the pharmacist industry within Germany, where this will be apparently administered and allowed to be bought. They're saying, well, we don't want to be getting involved in like selling drugs.
But you can say this about alcohol. I mean, alcohol.
That's true. I agree with you.
But this is like when you say, why can't you have a great night out partying when because without relying on something to change your mood? But people do that with alcohol all the time. 8,000 people die a year.
And look how many alcohol-related deaths we've got. Right? I'm not saying we should ban alcohol, but
the point I'd make is this arbitrary notion of the war on drugs, where alcohol is just something which is mass encouraged and kills huge numbers of people. Yeah. But MDMA, you just said MDMA. Now, Professor David Nutt, who was the drugs advisor to the Labour government, who shamefully sacked him because he stated a basic fact. Taking ecstasy is far less dangerous than riding a horse. That is a fact. We're not criminalising people for riding horses. Why are we arresting people for doing something which isn't harmful?
Can I just understand your position? Is your position that we should legalise all drugs?
I would start by legalising cannabis and decriminalising other drugs. What decriminalisation mean, by the way, it doesn't mean you're selling cocaine in shops. It means in Portugal, if you were found with a certain amount of cocaine on you, which is below a limit, you're referred to a health clinic to have your needs assessed. If you are found with above that limit, then you're presumed to be a dealer and it's treated as a criminal issue. But I would start with cannabis and MDMA and other drugs, which I do not think, I'm afraid, are really harmful at all. They're way less harmful than alcohol. I would start with cannabis and MDMA. I would definitely legalise them. And with MDMA, what's the big threat with people, again, is taking ecstasy tablets with dodgy stuff put in them. And, you know, it reminds me of the debate on abortion, by the way, because, you know, people who are anti-abortion go, well, we'll just scrap it and then abortion won't happen. But it will happen. You get backstreet abortions that are dangerous. It's the same with drugs. If you take if you legalise, we can actually deal with those problems.
You know, a quote ascribed to Albert Einstein is that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's the war on drugs. We need to just be rational. Treat it as a health issue. Give people with problematic relationships with drugs the support they need. Weed out, to coin a phrase, the bad, dangerous stuff that gets mixed in with drugs. And stop being so hypocritical about the whole thing and stop criminalising people and ruining lives. Treat this rationally. Come on. That's all I've got to say on this. As ever, please like, subscribe. I'll see you soon.